Daryl Morey, thank you so much for coming on the Boardroom and welcome. I really appreciate this. I've been looking forward to this conversation. I want to start first how we start most of these interviews, just trying to understand your journey, understand how you got to be where you are today. And I think our fans really love to understand just the steps that are taken to get to this kind of ultimate place in your career.
Thanks for having me on. It's sort of an honor. I appreciate it. You guys have put something really cool together, and the fact that we did the thing at MIT was amazing. And so thanks for having me on. I'll try to give the shortest, least boring version of my background. If people have seen the movie Moneyball, the guy who was giving Billy Beane, the Brad Pitt character, all these ideas was a guy named Bill James, who's a pretty famous analytics guy in the baseball community. I worked for him in the early 90s on baseball. Myself and others at Stats Inc., which he founded, worked on basketball early days there. That was the sport I played poorly, but that I loved. And over time, the basketball analytics community grew up, and then I got the opportunity of a lifetime in the early 2000s to work with the Boston Celtics. I worked on the team that the Grauspec group that ended up buying the Celtics, and I was, one of the early employees there. And then from there, I got very fortunate to interview and get the Rockets job in 2006, and that's what I've been doing since. So that's hopefully concise.
Yeah. So your kind of like fascination with analytics and data started young, right? I saw you went to MIT after Northwestern. When you got to the Celtics, what was kind of the state of the NBA as it related to analytics, and what were they looking to do, and what were they looking to do with you?
Yeah, really non-existent in the NBA. There were some early pioneer type coaches like Dean Smith in college, and Dean Oliver, who's still a prominent person in the analytics community, had done some things, and John Hollinger, who people know, he was a public writer, had written many books, but otherwise at the team level, it was pretty non-existent. And to the credit of Wick Grauspec and Steve Paliuca at the Celtics, they brought in Danny Ainge, who's very smart and open, as people have learned, as he's been the amazing GM of the Celtics for so long. He was open to ideas, brought in Mike Zarin, who's become pretty prominent in the NBA as well. He was like an intern at the Celtics when I was there. And over time, it's just grown from there. And really people think of analytics, maybe positive, maybe negative, but the easiest way to think about it is at the end of the day, the job's the same. You have to make good decisions. Analysis just says, hey, let's just bring data to those decisions and try and make them better. And generally, if you can bring data in the right way to decisions, you can make better decisions. And it's really nothing more than that. People make it seem either too important or too not important enough. It's just another path to making better decisions.
Yeah, I always feel like it gets this kind of connotation like you're Matt Damon in a Good Will Hunting, and like you're using your window and coming up with equations to figure out that like James is better on one side or the other, when in reality you're doing preparation the way people have always done. Your preparation lives predominantly within analytics, and I'm sure you take other resources into that decision making, but you're making the decisions at the end of the day. There's no computer equation that spits out what you should do.
That's exactly right. I mean, the art form of basketball it's just that, it's an art form. I wish the data could tell me what to do. Famously, when I first got to the Rockets, I was working with the GM at the time, Carol Dawson, who was retiring, and that's why the Rockets brought me in. And we had a model to help make draft decisions, and it's provably nearly impossible to make good draft decisions. Like, nobody does it well. Anyone who's been in the job long enough has several mistakes, hopefully has some wins as well, but no one doesn't have any mistakes and can point to all like, oh, you should have picked this guy and not that guy. It's incredibly hard. And Carroll basically said when I got there, he was like, oh, I hear you have this draft model and it's going to tell us who to pick. That's good, because that's really hard. Like and I had to explain to him, no, it's still going to be really hard. You know, all it does is maybe make us a little better, but it's incredibly hard. I think where data really helps is it doesn't allow you to fool yourself. It tells you all the time, like, I would say data makes you say, I don't know, a lot more. You just have to say, look, as much as I think I know that a player from this school who does this is going to be a great player in the NBA, the reality is if you look through history, you're going to look in a careful way using data, you're going to find lots of counterexamples. So with data, you're saying, I don't know a lot more. And for folks interested, The Undoing Project was a book that talked a little bit about our processes and how saying I don't know is something that you should be saying a lot of.
Yeah. Tell me, I couldn't even answer this. I could try to answer it for somebody and maybe make myself look like I know the real answer, but I can't honestly say what true shooting percentage is.
Tell
me what true shooting percentage is.
That's a good one. Obviously, James Harden is one of the all-time greats on that. So a nice softball question, Rich. I appreciate it. So it's pretty simple. Like people, again, try to make analytics seem like this amazing thing, and I don't believe in it. I do believe in it. And generally I'll ask them, like, well, what numbers do you believe in? And generally they believe in that the final score determines the winner. Who has more points than the other team should be the winner. I think hopefully everyone can agree on that. So everyone agrees at least on two numbers, your score and the opponent's score. True shooting percentage really breaks down on the offensive end, your score into each possession. So each time you cross half court, how many points do you generate from crossing half court before the other team crosses half court? And then it assigns that to the player who uses the possession. So, James Harden takes a shot or turns it over or gets fouled and goes to the line. How many points does he generate before he uses that possession and the other team's going to come across half court? And at the end of the day, that really defines how good your team is. On defense, you want to minimize the true shooting percentage of the other team. Sometimes it includes offensive rebounds. Sometimes it doesn't. That can vary. I wish everything was well defined, but you're not wrong to be somewhat confused because people use it slightly differently. We're not quite what baseball is, where everything's defined. So.
Well, the good thing is I still couldn't answer the question now.
So I confused everything. All right. You bring the ball down, you're James Harden. How many points do you score before the other team gets the ball? How's that?
Done. That's my answer.
Makes it easier.
So I assume that this was the inspiration to creating the Sloan Conference. And like you said earlier, I was just there and did a live boardroom segment, and it's incredible what you put together. When did that kind of start to come together, and how was it putting it on the first year?
Yeah, so I was teaching a class at MIT while I was at Boston. I have sort of a passion for teaching. I was doing it with Jessica Gelman, who is a senior leader at the Patriots. We were co-teaching it. When I got the job in Houston in 2006, I think the owner, Leslie Alexander, correctly said, hey, I can't have you flying to Boston teaching a class and trying to run my team. And I said, okay, that makes sense. Well, what if we turn the class into just a weekend seminar? And it was still going to be like a class. But as we did the planning for the class, we basically said this would make more sense as a conference. And it started with 100 people. It's now 3,000. And it went from, really nobody attending or caring about it to Obama being there. So, yeah, it's been quite a run. We sort of caught the tiger by the tail. And the MIT students and my co-founder, Jessica, do an amazing job. And I think you've gotten to know Jessica, Rich. She's an amazing figure in the industry.
It's really amazing. I mean, I think it's like it's become the kind of preeminent sports conference, I think, to some degree. And it's amazing that you've been able to create that and kind of manage your day job as GM.
Well, that's why I had to make sure to credit the MIT students. It's become like an experiential learning thing where a small two leads and then about 30 students at MIT every year really take on the task of running it. And I just try not to screw it up at this point. So that allows me to focus on the right things, which is helping Russell Westbrook and James Harden win a title.
Yeah. Well, I was at the Sloan Conference, which felt like 3 days before Rudy Gobert tested positive, and in a lot of ways, what kind of symbolized our country shutting down, our world shutting down. As you guys prepare to go to Orlando in the beginning of July, what support are you giving your team? What conversations are you having with your players? Obviously, I know the league and the Player Association and front offices have dealt with everything they can from a safety precaution standpoint, but just in terms of support and talking to your players, what's that process been like?
Yeah, in fact, right after this call is a call with all the Rockets players, Mike D'Antoni, myself, and Keith Jones, who is sort of a legend in the industry, our trainer, but that doesn't really describe what he does. It's constant communication. And, the reality is, I think the big leap in thinking that has helped hopefully our players, but I think everybody, and I think Commissioner Silver really has done a nice job presenting this, is like, it's not about the risk we're taking in Orlando. There's clearly going to be risks for the players, for the staff, everyone. It's about the relative risks. We, as much as all of us are trying to take the proper precautions, and the Rockets organization has been more fortunate than most in terms of people not getting the virus, that there is risk when you're just at home and you're just going about your daily life. So what I think the league is trying to do is make sure that the risk that you're taking in Orlando on the restart is on a similar level, or hopefully less than the risk people are taking at home, so that we're not adding any risk. We're bringing basketball back, but we're going to do it in a way that doesn't add any risk to anyone's life. And I think that when you think about it that way, I think it helps people understand why bringing basketball back is possible. And I think it's all conversation with the players.
Yeah, and I would imagine that in your conversations, more important is maybe where everybody's mind is at with what's going on in the country and this incredible revolution happening. And while there's such a unfair racial injustice in our country that's been just oppressed for 400 years, it feels like the conversation and the line between right and wrong are being drawn more than we've ever seen. So I would assume that part of that conversation has got to be revolve around that.
Absolutely. Obviously, our players are very active. I think you saw Russell Westbrook's doing a series on the Tulsa race riot, which I was embarrassed until a writer I've gotten to know, Damon Lindelof, who did Lost. He's a big basketball fan. Until he did a show, Watchmen, which was centered around those Tulsa race riots, I was embarrassed for myself that I did not know much about this or anything about it. And I learned about it in the last year, and it's just a horrifying part of our history that I think everyone needs to understand that there's a reason we're having problems today. A lot of the initial systems that were set up, even back into the 1800s, have unfortunately created the inequitable dynamic that we're facing now. And just to bring it home, when I was growing up, I worked as a usher in a movie theater, and I actually had to work with the police officers very closely for the years I was at that movie theater. And I saw firsthand both the good, like the amazing officers that I worked with closely, managing crowds and things like that. But I also saw, unfortunately, some of the sort of very negative things some of those police officers did. And it's very, I obviously can't understand, what people are going through there, but I can understand and that we need organizations like the ACLU, which is one I've always supported in a very public way, who defend people who have been unfairly arrested, called out, treated by the police. That those organizations are really important. Everyone's, I think, re-examining what they've gone through and are figuring out how they can help. We just did that with the MIT conference as well, in terms of like the specific actions that we're going to take to increase minority representation at the analytics conference. I think that's an area that we needed to do better on. And I think I thought that we were on a good path, but when we really examined it, we have not done enough. And I think the fact that everyone's taking those steps to re-examine and do better, I think is great for the country.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and that's what you hope to get when you protest. And I think the idea that protests have now settled into being mostly peaceful, and even when they got a bit unrestful, it feels like disruption and that kind of energy is really the only way to get attention. And it's unfortunate that people want to harp on that and not understand where it's manifested from, and understand that the anger is so deep and runs for such a long time that you should expect nothing less. And but I, like you said, I do think though that this is such a incredible time in our country, and we got to keep our foot on the gas to some respect and continue to kind of look at them in the mirror and educate our children. I think white America has to really look at themselves in the mirror and educate their children and make sure that these next generations continue to work on the progress that hopefully as a country we're making right now. And it always amazes me when people are shocked at just how important NBA players and the culture of the NBA is in standing up for what's right and being outspoken and having such a impactful voice. And I can't really think of another group of people that are more astute minds, philanthropic minds, business minds, social activists. And, and like you said, Russell was out in the parade last week. Do you think people don't really understand the magnitude of the impact that the NBA and the NBA players have on our society?
Yeah, I think actually some players don't quite get there, and I try to make sure I educate them. I won't say the player, but I've had one recently who had a lot of, strong beliefs that I thought were very important to get out there, and I just encouraged him to do it, and you almost wish that others could have that big voice, but the reality is, that their voice is incredibly important. I'm very proud to be part of the NBA, part of what Commissioner Stern and Commissioner Silver built over time, which is to encourage the players and employees to be active in important things. And that can, I think generally that's extremely positive. It obviously brings up uncomfortable conversations at times, but the fact that the NBA, part of the brand has been to enact social change, I think is one reason that it's very great. It's awesome to be part of the NBA.
Yeah, well, I commend you, and I have a lot of respect for you as a friend, as an executive. Look forward to continue to build with you. Be back at Sloan next year. Appreciate you coming on. I have one more question.
Yeah.
You really think you guys would have won that series if Chris didn't get hurt?
That hits a little home for you there. I do. I mean, but of course you got to win it. So like, what does it matter what I say? I mean, people, again, on our platforms, you have one, your clients have huge platforms, Rich. Sometimes you're amazed that people, spend too much time on your words. I mean, at the end of the day, I would hope all our players and all of us thought we would win. We thought we could win without Chris, and we didn't. With Chris, we feel like we would, but like, talk is cheap. There's a lot of teams that feel like they, should have won if X or Y. At the end of the day, the Warriors were an unbelievable dominant team, and they had our number pretty much every year. And it actually reminded me growing up in Cleveland, where every year we lost to the Bulls. I mean, there's just these transcendent teams in basketball. We have a history of that when they come together like the Warriors did, I mean, knocking them off takes a lot. And credit to the Raptors. It took their amazing season, plus, obviously some luck going their way, just like we would have needed luck. And, it is what it is. Hopefully we break through this year. We feel like we've got a real good shot this year. I think we, right now are sitting as like the fourth best chance to win it, which I wish it was the first best chance, but fourth is pretty good, and I think we're a little better than people think.
All right. Well, best of luck to you. I know you got a lot of work ahead of you and a lot of preparation. I appreciate it. We'll be watching, and I'll catch up with you soon. Thanks for joining the boardroom.
Thanks for having me. Well, amazing show you put together. Really cool. Thanks.
Appreciate it, man. Take care.